Hey, it's Pete Kroll, and we are back with another episode of Dollars and Change, the expert's guide to sustainable and responsible investing. And we are in Washington, D.C., because the U.S. SIP, the Sustainable Investment Forum, is holding their annual conference here. And I am really, really lucky to have a friend of mine here in town to join us, Chris Castro. He is the Executive Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at Climate First Bank, one of my favorites. If you've heard me talk before, we had his boss, Ken LaRoe, on last year sometime. Today we're going to talk about some things a little bit different. We're still going to come back to Climate First, but we want to find out a little bit about what's going on with Chris, because Chris has a really, really cool and interesting background. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
So I first heard about you when you were working in the city of Orlando.
Yes.
And you were Chief Sustainability Officer there?
Correct. I was a senior advisor to Mayor Buddy Dyer and the Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer there, and really took reins in 2014 to kind of start developing the strategy for how to move Orlando into one of the most environmentally friendly, socially inclusive, economically vibrant cities in the country. And in a short amount of time, Orlando really became a leading city driving climate and sustainability.
And we don't think about Florida from this context, right?
Correct.
So how were you able to sort of, shift that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of functions. One, I'm very passionate about this topic.
Right.
And I always talk about, it's the trifecta of passion, patience, and persistence that ultimately wins the day.
I love that. I have not. It's the 3 Ps.
Yep, it's been my recipe for everything I do and I bring that to everything that I actually put my energy into, and it has yielded significant benefit and results, right? And so I think first and foremost, you got to be passionate about what you do, and that type of energy drives through your team, and it drives through the institution that you're working in. Right. And so you got to realize that you are first and foremost the lead in moving this forward. So I have that, certainly. Secondly, I think you had a leader like Mayor Dyer who understood that in order to move one of the fastest growing cities in the country into one that's long-term sustainable, that we needed to think about the green economy as a key part of the economic growth, right, into the future.
Because it is the next economy.
It's inevitably the next economy, and it's attracting the creative class, right? Younger generations are looking for communities to live in, communities that essentially are embracing of these concepts. And of course, what follows is business, right? And actual economic growth and investment in that space. That was the whole theory behind what we called Green Works Orlando. And that became the full, I ended up moving it out of the mayor's office to make it more resilient in times of future changes. And we created a full department for sustainability and resilience, and grew it from a single person to now over 15 people working full time to kind of drive that stuff forward.
So talk about some of the initiatives that you implemented during your time there.
There was a tremendous amount. The Greenworks office really oversees 7 key aspects of urban sustainability. So it's clean energy and the transition away from fossil, green buildings and how to build the built environment to be sustainable, clean water, focused both on not only the potable water aspect, but the consumption of our water, the quality and the quantity. We had a focus on zero waste and moving towards a circular economy. And how do we start, moving in that direction? Livability and nature-based solutions, transportation. These were the key verticals, right, in my office. And across the realm, the whole goal was to institutionalize sustainability. So I'm working with the director of transportation, the head of economic development, the head of planning, public works, you name it. And the whole idea was to make sustainability part of our DNA. We certainly started with our operations. So we have a great sustainability operations plan. And one of the big things that I realized was, as a city, it makes no sense to build a new building, a new fire station or a community center to the building code of your state, which in my opinion is the worst building you could build by law.
It's the low bar.
It is literally the worst you could build by law.
Yeah.
And as government, it didn't make any sense to me to build to the worst, to the least efficient, and then own this thing until it crumbles, right? And what we often do is we shortchange the upfront cost for the long-term expense. And I brought this proposal to Mayor Dyer and I said, listen, absolutely no sense. We should create a policy that says every new building has to be LEED Silver or above. And in addition, it can't just be LEED Silver. We're going to carve out a third of the scorecard that's specific to energy efficiency, on-site renewables, and alternative transportation and EVs. So that, you can figure out how to get the other points, but we wanted to make sure we were driving efficiency, decarbonization, and making sure we were most resilient properties possible. And now, over the lifetime of these buildings, we're going to be saving 30, 40% of the cost of ownership and operations, right? Makes no sense. So that was just a simple thing, and that translated into the private sector where we passed commercial pace and residential pace, enabling capital, right, in the market. We partnered with the CDFI and ended up doing low interest loans for low and moderate income to do clean energy. And then Orlando has its own municipal utility known as OUC. And that gave us other tools to get creative, and we actually instituted an on-bill financing program that's still around today and is one of the leading programs nationwide.
So
that's just literally high level, just on buildings.
But I mean, that's just crazy when you think about everything that you were able to do. Because I know in North Carolina, because we're a home rule state, none of that could ever happen.
You're right. You're right.
And you're really lucky in that. I'm just the fact that you have your own utility.
Yep. Municipal utility was a big deal. We're the only city in the state of Florida that has a benchmarking and transparency law, basically a building performance standard, right? To start getting the buildings to start scoring.
It's almost like you're in Europe.
Reporting, right? A lot of people are like, "You're a California city here in Florida. What's going on?"
Yeah.
And so I do think it's the overall vibe in the Orlando community. But there was a lot of political will. There was a lot of interest in the business community to be the Epcot of the 21st century. How do we become the experimental prototype community of tomorrow in the real world? And that vision was exactly what Mayor Dyer wanted me to chart forward.
Well, I was thinking, you were talking about, municipalities typically build to the low bar, right? Mm-hmm. But shouldn't it be up to the municipality to be the leader? To sort of set the stage for what you want everybody else to do?
That was the idea. That was actually the selling point for the commission, is that if we are going to pass this benchmarking law, you're going to force all these private building owners to start stepping on the scale, we need to lead by example. And so that LEED Silver standard became the model, and then we built an incentive program for the private sector around it. We actually have a tax rebate or a tax abatement program where if you build to LEED Silver and you match us, we'll give you 50% of the first year property taxes back as an incentive. If you hit LEED Gold, 75%, platinum or above, 100% of the first cost. Why? Well, because a lot of the times developers don't own and operate these buildings. They're building, they're flipping.
Yeah.
They want to VE everything possible to make the most on the sale. And so I'm going to VE out a lot of the efficiency improvements, unless in that 24 months when I'm holding it and before I sell it, I can actually get back the green premium of all this stuff. That became the aha moment.
Oh, that's so smart.
And I got that from convening BOMA, NAIOP, IFMA, IRUM, AIA, USGBC, all the major building owner and manager associations, to hear from them. What is going to move your needle? What is it going to take? And they kept saying, listen, I don't see the value in a LEED building over the lifetime. And I said, fine, let's figure out a way to get you the value up front while you own it. And then the owner-operator gets the benefit.
They get all the perks.
All the perks of that great stuff. And by the way, your building is going to sell for a higher amount.
Yep.
So you're going to get a higher per square foot sale. It's just trying to educate them and
if it's an apartment, you typically have a higher rental rate as well.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about Next Gen a lot, and Next Gen wants to be in a building that's cleaner, not just in its operations, but it's healthier too.
Healthier,
and you find that
transportation options. For what are the modes for my employees to get to and from my work? There's something called the mode score now that buildings are starting to look at, that basically looks at access to public transit, bikeability, walkability.
Right.
It's a big piece of businesses relocating to an institution. It's not just about location anymore. Yeah. It's also about, what is my cost of operations? What is my carbon footprint here? What are my options for my employees? And as Climate First Bank, we have integrated that as a B Corp bank, right? We've integrated that into the operations, right? So we're trying to provide perks to our employees to move us in this direction too.
I want to get to climate first, but first I want to talk about your role in the Biden administration. I want to talk about your work at the Department of Energy, because I know on LinkedIn, I was constantly seeing some of the really cool initiatives that you were working on. So what are some of the things that you're really proud of that you worked on?
Unbelievable experience to be part of President Biden's team and Secretary Granholm's team directly. Fun story. Like, I was working hard in Orlando. Mm-hmm. I have a runway of policies and programs for years to come. I don't have no idea or interest to move. Yeah. And I get an email from the White House, and I flag it as a phishing email because it says,
that's what I would do.
You're a finalist for the chief of staff role at the Department of Energy. And I hadn't thrown my name in the hat. I didn't realize, at the end of the day, it was real. My CIO comes back to me and flagged and said, listen, that's not a phishing email. Call the number. Sure enough, it was the Office of Presidential Personnel. Wow. And I did 7 interviews between March of 2022 to June, up and down the White House and the Department of Energy, and eventually got offered to be the chief of staff for state and community energy programs across the federal government, across the Department of Energy.
Wow.
An unbelievable mission space in a time when President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Congress had passed the most historic climate laws, right? And respectable, right?
So you're just sitting there like,
so we're
yes,
sitting
let's
like,
do this.
I'm seeing in Orlando, the bipartisan infrastructure law gets passed, and I'm already convening my partners in Orlando, literally, for a federal funding workshop in February of 2022, before I get this email. And we're thinking about, how do I braid resources? How do I get the transit authority and the housing authority to come together for a grant to bring down, to drive to, I mean, it was amazing. And all of a sudden you get this opportunity. So I moved my family to DC in June of 2022 and am the first employee into this new office, a brand new federal programs office. And at the time, $6 billion under management from the BIL, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And it was things like the Weatherization Assistance Program, driving low-income energy efficiency, Renew America Schools and Renew America Nonprofits, so funding for public schools and nonprofits to make retrofits, and more. And then all of a sudden, the Inflation Reduction Act is passed in August of 2022. So now I'm a month in, and by October, we get a DOCAST. We get this DOCAST email, which is an email from the secretary to all employees. And she basically says, okay, Department of Energy has been granted over $60 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act to manage. These are the offices that are going to manage this money. And SCEP, my office, had $10 billion under management just in the IRA. So I'm a few months into building this office, the infrastructure, understanding what roles I need, and all of a sudden my office gets upended with $10 more billion. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? This is unreal.
Yeah.
And the $10 billion were things like the home energy rebates, $9 billion or $8.8 billion to help consumers offset the cost of electrifying, right? And then another $1 billion for building codes to help cities and states with code making authority to actually institute building performance standards, which I had done in Orlando, right? So it was this.
So you're the perfect person for this.
They headhunted me. I had no idea, but you're in a tough state like Florida.
Yeah.
Somehow you're passing policy that's like in California or Europe. We need to replicate this, is what they told me. They're like, Castro, we need you to create an office that scales what you've done in every nook and cranny of this country. And every single day, I had 2 shifts every day since I got there. Most people think government employees, you do your 8 hours, you're gone. Dude, I literally was working 13 and 14 hours a day. And not just me, our staff.
Because you're passionate and you knew you were having an impact.
100%. We had meetings at 10 o'clock at night, scheduled meetings. Like I had booked meetings, scheduled, with teams in the evening.
Your wife probably wasn't too happy about
Well,
this.
they were sleeping. When they go down at 9, I'm back on till literally midnight almost every single night. I'm not joking you, dude. It was relentless. But we all knew that this was the moment, right? And we got out at DOE, 82% of the money was obligated out the door.
That's great.
To our grantees, okay? In SCEP, it was 11.2 billion of the 16 that was officially out the door by January 20th. So we hear a lot of noise that's going on right now about the federal government stalling these grants. And a lot of that, you need to realize, is about 20% of the money that is still TBD. Either has been we've selected an awardee, but we haven't contracted with them.
Gotcha.
Usually there's this period of 120 days, 90 to 100, where you contract and you create your account. Well, we had selected all the way to January 20th, and then they paused the money. And so even though you got selected, you weren't obligated.
Yeah, you're still waiting.
That money is TBD. That money, technically, they could claw back. But that's the 20%. There's still
80% impact.
$90+ billion that is on the street, that is in RFPs, that are going to work for, municipalities and nonprofits. I mean, the money
that is making us more energy efficient. That is doing
more resilient.
Yes,
that is helping us to expand the grid. That is helping to put workers back. Lower cost on households. All of the things.
I can see how you got your team to come in for 10 o'clock meetings, because I'm energized to go to a 10 o'clock meeting right now, and it's only 4:30 in the afternoon.
Right?
Yeah.
But we were doing this like, yes, exactly.
This is our time.
The space was unreal. SCEP had 28 grants, 16 billion, 28 different opportunities to impact the economy and drive forward. And it was quite incredible to see that the projects, especially in rural parts of America, right? 80% of this bill and IRA money went to Republican GOP districts.
Right.
80%. The intentionality behind the Biden-Harris administration to make sure that the dollars had the biggest impact was incredible. Justice 40, and the fact that the whole idea of taking 40% of that money and making sure it goes to lower and moderate income communities, those that have been overpolluted,
because
and
it's going to impact them
disenfranchised.
so much to a so much greater degree than anybody else.
And when you lift them up and you create disposable incomes, that creates economies in and of itself, right?
Yep, absolutely.
In our communities, it creates these investment cycles that ultimately help to bring prosperity to the community writ large. So we knew we are doing the right thing. And it is unfortunate to see what this current administration is trying to do to claw back, to put roadblocks ahead. But I will be clear. This transition is inevitable. It's irresistible, and there is no stopping what's happening. And I know for a fact that we're just going to continue to drive it forward, probably more at the local level at this point in time. But
and on the corporate level.
And at the corporate level.
Absolutely.
I think private, philanthropy, local, right, is really where this movement is going to continue.
The train has left the station. There's no pulling it back. So let's talk about corporate. Let's talk about where you are right now. So I know you were an original board member with Climate First as well, right?
I was. Ken, when he sold First Green Bank, this was 2018.
Yep.
He takes this RV tour.
That's when I first met Ken.
That's when I first met Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, so he, and again, they were in a tough position because the de novo period for First Green was 9 years.
Wow.
Because of the financial meltdown. So they basically said, we'll charter you your bank, but you're going to have to be de novo for almost a decade. They were like, all right, we'll try to make it work.
Not everybody knows what de novo is, so just give us a quick...
De novo is a regulatory period that FDIC places on a new bank or a financial institution, and essentially it doesn't allow you to grow beyond the business plan that they approved.
Right.
So it's essentially a roadmap for a 3-year period, usually, to say, this is how we're going to grow, this is how much money we're going to grow, and we essentially only can go to work with that plan,
right,
even if we make more, right, than that plan. We can't put it to work until de novo is done. Well, during that period, because of the 2008 meltdown, FDIC said, listen, dude, we're going to give you the charter, but 9-year de novo, which again restricted the ability for the shareholders and the bank to grow, to hit our mission. We weren't able to grow and drive equity the way that we wanted.
I'm amazed they even did it.
I'm too. The fact that they went 9 years is unbelievable. And they exited because, of course, Seacoast had a great offer. But funny enough, Ken goes around his RV tour with his wife Cindy, and he comes back, and I'm one of the first people he takes out to lunch. And Ken is one of the most amazing people I've ever met, right? One of the most genuine.
He's a good friend of mine.
Business guy, but also rabid environmentalist, right? And at the end of the day, he literally said, Chris, I didn't fulfill my mission. Mm-hmm. I said, really, Ken? I mean, you exited, you did well, your grandkids are good for the rest of their life. Like, they're good to go. And he's like, I didn't fulfill my mission. What happened was I didn't have a board of integrity, and I need you to help me build that board. That's what he told me.
Wow.
That was the mission. And I said, Ken, that is an unbelievable honor. And at the time, I'm the mayor's senior advisor. I'm the chief sustainability officer. I'm like, I'll spend nights and weekends. We're going to build this sucker. We're going to do the business plan together. We'll go after the capital raise. I'll help build our team. And that's what I did. That's what I did from 2019 till 2022, when I had to vacate my role as a fiduciary member of the board. We were driving that ship. And then, of course, right when I saw the election happen, did what it did, first call was to Ken and Lex. Yep. And I said, hey, I'm very eager to get back onto the board because I really want to continue to drive that forward from there. And they came back to me and said, I got a better idea. I actually want to offer you an EVP. And actually help us scale this thing nationally and take your experience, what we've done in government, and let's take it to the next level.
So let's talk about your role now.
Yep.
You're EVP, but Chief Sustainability Officer.
Correct.
What are you doing with the bank?
Right now, I'm very much an all-around player for Ken and Lex and the executive team.
And Lex is the CEO of
Lex
the
is our
bank.
CEO of the bank.
Yeah.
Ken is the chairman of the holding company. Right. Lex is also on the board of both the bank, of the holding company, and our fintech. So, but all that said is, I'm basically supporting with a number of different things. One is we just closed our capital raise, which was very successful. I was leaning in hard to support us and getting that in.
And just so you know, this is the end of June that we're recording this. This is probably going to show a little bit later. So.
Yeah, we just closed June 15th and had a very successful capital raise. So I was, portion of my time was very focused on trying to bring that in. Portion of my time is on deposit and loan origination. How do I keep building the bank? I'm also very focused on partnership development with the bank, specifically with other financial institutions. I'm leading our strategy for partnerships with green banks, CDFIs, state CEFIs, these state energy financing institutions. They're a new type of institution. And ultimately figuring out how to bring our private capital to the market and braid with other sources of concessionary capital so that we can drive affordability and drive essentially the adoption to a scale that we
That's
need
what I was
to
going to
see.
say. It's creating scale,
It's
right?
creating scale. That's
Yeah.
exactly what we need. And so a good example is our partnership with Montgomery County Green
Right.
Bank. Right there, we have.
That's in Maryland, right?
It's in Maryland, and we're originating through our fintech product, right? And the idea was that the Green Bank wanted to start providing loans to low and moderate income households, but they didn't have the capacity, the understanding of credit and underwriting, the contractor network, the servicing, basically everything.
Yeah.
And they said, if we can use our money to help make your loan product more affordable, then it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
And so they take our 30-year 799 clean energy loan and they buy it down to 499 for every resident in the county. And if you're 80% AMI or below, it's a principal-only solar loan. They buy the full 799.
Think about that.
And now somebody who got solar with no upfront cost, they're saving at least 30%
Right.
compared to their past utility bill from day one. And they didn't have to grant that 100%, that project, 100% to that household. The goal is to help them save money,
Right.
and still provide a financial product. Now they could leverage that 3 and 4 and 5 times more for many other households versus just providing a 100% grant to the solar array.
It's a no-brainer.
No brainer. And so that's the goal. Integrated capital management. How do we take private and public capital and other sources of concessionary and really create these credit enhancement tools that bring private capital to scale?
I want to be cognizant of our listeners and viewers' time. We have a final question everybody gets, but before we do that, what did I miss? What did I miss in this amazing world of Chris, who is changing the world?
We've talked a lot about my journey in government, right, with City of Orlando and DOE. I'm also very much a serial eco-entrepreneur is what I'd like to call myself. And so in addition to the bank, I've been very engaged in the nonprofit sector.
Okay.
And my organization, Ideas for Us, is 17 years old today.
Ideas for Us?
Ideasforus.org. And I started this when I was just a student at the University of Central Florida, trying to get people involved in eco-action, right? Not just the advocacy side of this and the activism side of fighting for climate solutions, but also what is the pragmatic solution? What is the action that we can be taking? And so Ideas for Us went from UCF to now it's in over 30 countries around the world.
Wow. It's
become an UN accredited NGO, and it's a micro granting philanthropy. So we're essentially corporations donate to our organization and we micro grant those dollars out to SDG related projects. Right?
Okay.
So projects that
SDG
advance
is
the
Sustainable Development Goals from the UN.
Yep. And so we have projects all over in Nepal, in Nairobi, Kenya, in Bolivia, all over that are essentially helping to advance community scale action for the goals. And I'm really passionate about not just from the finance angle or the government angle, but also the civil society and the philanthropic side of the house. I see this from a very integrated and interdisciplinary perspective.
Yep.
And each one of us play a critical role in moving it forward. And so I've been trying to get my hands in all of them, to tell you the truth, to figure out what are the tools that are actually going to move this thing forward. So I look forward to seeing what else we come out with.
You have a tremendous amount of energy for the amount of work that you're doing. So whatever you have, I want to take.
I'm Cuban. I got Cuban coffee in the blood.
Oh, there you go.
The cafecitos. I don't know if you know about those, but
Yeah, I can't. My body won't let me do those coffee anymore. Unfortunately, I used to drink a lot of it. Anyway, so everybody gets the same last question.
Okay.
And so I usually preface it by saying, look, so Asheville had a hurricane hit us 9 months ago.
Yeah.
We're in Washington D.C. right now in June, and it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely boiling. We saw the fires out in L.A. At the beginning of the year. So, we have all this evidence
Hurricane
of
Helene and
yes.
frickin' the North Carolina.
That's what I was talking about in Asheville. Yeah.
Unreal.
With all of this evidence of the changed climate, which is what I call it now instead of climate change, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? A lot gives me hope. One is there is an incredible amount of energy in young people in general who are stepping up. They're demanding change. They're organizing themselves and little by little are actually moving the needle. Two, banks like Climate First and companies that are using a private sector approach to solve this also gives me a lot of hope. When I was in the administration, we had this mantra that we said that this transition to a carbon-free energy future is government enabled, but it's private sector led.
Right.
And let us not be naive in thinking that, right? We enabled through the IRA, through the bill, through the CHIPS Act. That was all enabling manufacturing, supply chains, enabling infrastructure resilience, and enabling the tools and the incentives for consumers and businesses to drive that economy forward, right? It was the trifecta. And so that transition to the private sector with business models that are decarbonizing and at the same time driving financial returns is amazing.
Yeah.
And that gives me a lot of hope. And looking at this bank being focused on climate as a B Corp, but also the fastest growing bank in America.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's not something that a lot of people think is real, but it's true.
And it's based in Florida.
And it's based in Florida, of all places.
Yeah.
FDIC is also scratching their head saying this is an amazing business that has real potential to scale, not just in the climate vertical, but other values aligned areas that we care about, right? And that's, I think, the future. We know that Climate First Bank can't solve this problem ourselves. But if we can create the tools through our fintech that then can be provided and applied to other institutions, we can then build the muscle, the green lending muscle of CDFIs, of community banks, and even the large traditionals to really help us bring the necessary capital to make that transition a reality, right? And so I'm very hopeful in that. There's a lot to not be hopeful for, right? We've had the hottest day, month, year, and decade all within the last 10 years.
Right.
And so we're talking about an unprecedented time in modern human history. Right. But I do think that there's a tremendous amount of momentum towards the future that we want. And just a couple of last stats. Last year we saw 96% of all new energy that came online be carbon free. This year,
solar, wind,
batteries. Unreal.
I use that same statistic all the time.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
This year, EIA projects 95%, and we're in Trump 1. Yeah. Right? Next year, it'll be maybe 92. But 9 out of 10 of all new sources coming online will be carbon free.
And when we look at the energy, the clean energy employment, 3.5 million. Fossil fuels, 1.7 million.
Right. You're talking about double the amount of people who are being employed, and we're only a fraction. We're still only less than 20%, right, of the actual power. Yeah. Think about the opportunity and the growth here.
Spot on.
Renewables is the cheapest, the fastest, the most versatile to apply and install, right? At the end of the day, again, it's irresistible and it's inevitable that it's transitioning. Right. The question becomes at what speed and scale, and might we be able to use a model like Climate First to really accelerate the work? And we're starting to see it happen.
Awesome. Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure. Again, you are so freaking energizing.
Thank you, man.
I absolutely love it. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We ran a little bit long, but I think it was absolutely worth it to have this discussion. Please make sure that you like the episode, share it with your friends, make sure that you are following us on all your social media channels, and also make sure that you have your copy of the Sustainable Investor book that we've got out right now. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.